Yay, it's tax day. I'm so excited.
Do you feel charitable?
I do feel charitable. I know I'm helping out. For instance, I'm getting people from other countries into our country illegally just by giving my tax dollars to the charitable organization called the United States of America. And they are giving those tax dollars of mine and yours to fly people here illegally and then set them up, get them, fly them to wherever they want to go, and then set them up, maybe use some of my town's dollars, my tax dollars for my towns, just to have the town be able to have a little tent city for them, or maybe just take over like the YMCA so they can have a swimming pool too, wherever they're staying. Man, do I feel charitable today. Really feel charitable. Or you really want to feel like you're doing good work. Just think of the millions of dollars that your whole life you'll work, your entire life, and you'll probably never, ever even pay,
for even one of those programs.
One program or just one of the giveaways to people who went to college, then went and to get their PhD or their doctorate, and then they decided, I can't pay it. And so you're paying for that.
Or they said they can pay it, and they're just going to get it paid off anyway, even though they are totally planning on paying it.
Or those people that are now ripping us off in Ukraine. I feel so good about those guys, too.
Yeah.
Or the F-35, where only 25% of them are actually mission ready, but we paid for them.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about that, like every day you will work in your entire life, all the taxes you'll ever pay in your entire life, don't even add up to the amount of weapons that fired at some Russian target and missed in the last month. Like just the ones that missed, that didn't even do any damage.
In fact, all the taxes your children and your grandchildren won't cover that either.
Isn't that great? Like, doesn't that make you feel really good about your country and the way it operates?
It does. And it's about time people pay their fair share. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they won't.
Gee, they won't pay their fair share. Gosh darn it. So those evil rich people, well, not the really rich people, not if you're really, really rich, like the Kennedys or Soros or somebody like that. They're not going to pay their fair share. They already paid it years ago, and now they're in a trust fund. So they don't make income per se, so they don't have to pay income tax. But we're going to use those people to try to make everybody hate the rich and then not go after those people, but the people who are just like entrepreneurs, that are just trying to start a business and, hire people locally to do things locally. I hate those people. Anyway, I don't know if you put up your tree or have you filed for your extension yet?
You're going to be amazed to hear this. And a lot of people have criticized me over the years and say, hey, you never file your taxes on time. And, this year I have to be honest with you. I'm proud to say I filed my extension on time this year.
Wow, that's amazing.
First time in a long time.
He doesn't pay his taxes on April. Never.
Please finish that sentence since we're on national radio. I don't pay my taxes on April 15th.
On April 15th.
I pay them by the October 15th deadline.
Right.
But I do pay my taxes. I want to make sure that's very clear to all our IRS listeners.
In fact, I know you well enough to know, because you work with me, I overpay on my taxes. You overpay on your taxes.
Psychotic about it. Whenever my accountant asks, hey, so this one is like kind of a borderline one. I pay it. Just pay it.
I know. Mine's not even borderline. They're like, okay, well, this one is pretty clear.
Right.
Nope. If it's not absolutely clear,
right.
If it's
don't
not
want anything to do with it.
Everybody takes this. I'm not taking it.
I'm psychotically defensive about it, and I think especially as a conservative these days, you have to be.
You have to be. You have to be. Well, they didn't. It's not like they spent, what was it, $85 billion on new...
Oh, the employees.
All the new employees.
Yeah.
So they're definitely going after George Soros with that. They're definitely going to do that. So.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, can you imagine all the pressure of these big left-wing donors right now? They're probably shaking in their boots.
Right.
All these really rich people with all these questionable taxes. You never know. I'm sure they're coming after you.
So now the average American pays 1/4 of their income in taxes every year. That's 25 cents on every dollar. Gee, I wish that were true. But that's really not all you pay in taxes. That's just to the federal government, okay? So when you make money, you're taxed. When you spend money, you're taxed. When you don't spend money, you're taxed. And sometimes you're taxed when you die. I mean, I just love it. I mean, this is really, and the whole thing is, it's actually legal, which is quite a racket if you can get that. So we've put together a list of the 5 most immoral taxes that you're forced to pay. And that's hard to do because I find all of them immoral. But let's start with one that's not really considered a tax, but it is inflation, called the hidden tax. Let's say you have $10,000 sitting in a bank account, or, you've got it in your 401k and you're like, we're going to retire one day. Honey, we're already 87 years old. I know, but we're going to retire someday when we can afford it. So you have that $10,000 sitting in the bank. You're saving up for the future, but the government doesn't stop spending money. So the next thing you know, a gallon of milk costs twice as much as it used to. Now that $10,000 in your bank account is worth a lot less. So what does that mean? Because the government can't control its spending, you're being punished for saving your money. And it's legal. Isn't that great? Inflation rose another 3.5% year over year, which means I think the total now is like 18% inflation from when Joe Biden got in. It's 18 or 22% inflation, right around there. So that's good. So you're actually paying about 20% in hidden tax, but they don't call it a tax. Why? Because they're absolutely immoral liars. So, and that moves us on to the 4th most immoral tax, the death tax or the estate tax. I like the estate tax because then I think it's only Bruce Wayne and his cronies that are going to get hit. Who has an estate? So maybe we should call it a death tax because the only reason why you're being taxed is because you died. Now, the only reason this isn't in the top 3 is that most people don't pay it. In 2024, only estates valued over $13.61 million can be federally taxed. Yeah, but that's going to change. That's going to come down. And it's only the value of the estate over that amount that gets taxed. So your estate is worth less than, 13 point. You can pass that down tax-free. Well, kind of. First of all, still doesn't make it right. When was the government given the power to tax the dead? Well, they do have rights. I mean, after all, many of the dead have voted for taxes after their death. So no matter how much money you save up, they're going to get their grubby little fingers on it. Now, coming in at number 3 is Stu's favorite, income tax. Now, this one is so unconstitutional that they had to amend the Constitution to start doing it. You make money, and then the government takes a portion of that money without telling you up front, using all sorts of complicated rules and regulations, and then you have to file the return to prove that you're not illegal. Now, no person is illegal, except for those who didn't file their income tax. You have to prove you're not illegal when you file that. But if you file it, wrong, well, then the IRS can throw you in jail. But they never do that. It's not like they hired 87,000 IRS agents to go after small businesses and people like you. That's just not happening. Now, I know what you're thinking. The government needs that money to function, that income tax. Well, the government first imposed the first income tax in 1862 to fund the Civil War. So the government functioned for almost 100 years without tapping into your income directly. And then after the war, the tax was repealed. Yeah, until 1913. So apparently they don't need it. No, they don't. So the government doesn't need the income tax to function. but it does make up a big chunk of our federal revenue. Fiscal year 2023, the government brought in $4.4 trillion in income tax revenue. $4.4 trillion. And you're like, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah, half of it actually was from income taxes. So, I don't think they're going to be repealing the 16th Amendment anytime soon, especially since the government spent $6.1 trillion. Now, I'm not a economist. I'm not an accountant. I'm really pretty bad at just basic math, but I think 6.1 is more than the 4.4 that the government, quote, makes. And I know if I spend more than I make, eventually I get in trouble. Good thing my income tax is paid for prisons, huh? Number 2, most immoral tax, the payroll tax. At first glance, this might seem a lot like the income tax. It's a tax the government quietly takes out of the money that you make every paycheck. But this one is just a bit more sinister. While the income tax funds a whole bunch of government spending, the payroll tax mostly just funds 2 things, Social Security and Medicare. And the vast majority of it goes to Social Security. So if you're under 50, just relax. You're never going to see that money again. I'm just turned 60. I'm never going to see that money. But actually, you would have never seen that money in the first place because payroll taxes that are withheld from your paychecks, in 2024, employees will pay 7.65% of their payroll tax into Medicare and Social Security without really even noticing it. But employers also have to match that tax. So the real payroll tax is 15.3% out of an employee's salary. And if you're self-employed, you get to pay that on your own. So that's wonderful. I mean, I don't know what I could do with 15%. That's almost nothing. And
it never gets discussed.
Yeah.
Like they'll talk about adjusting the rates occasionally.
No.
They never talk about the payroll tax, which, by the way, regressive tax, not a progressive tax, a regressive tax.
Yeah.
That evil rich people pay a lower percentage than poor people.
Right.
Smart.
So, immoral? You bet. Now, most immoral tax, what could it be? I'll tell you in just a minute. So the argument for property tax makes some sense. It's the tax levied by local governments, not the federal government. It funds things like schools, roads, bridges. Wait a minute. Didn't they just vote in Congress to give teachers more money? And they're always asking for money to build roads. And hey, don't think about it too deeply, huh? Trade-off is insane because, what most people think is the American dream is actually the New Deal redo of the American dream. The idea of the American dream was being able just to make it, just to live your own life, being left alone, and maybe, owning some property. And then it became 2 cars in a garage, a chicken in every pot, and a house. It's not really, but we the people, there is something about being a landowner that is very, very American. But if you save up enough money to put a deposit down on a house, thanks to inflation, the house is smaller, the deposit is bigger, but it's yours, once you pay off the mortgage. Not so fast. Skip a few decades ahead. The mortgage is finally done. Now you retire and you're not so big but very expensive inflation house. You still have to pay property tax. And that's for the school that your kids graduated from 20 years ago. And to make matters worse, the tiny house you bought has just been reappraised, and inflation never seems to stop. So now it's double what you bought it for. Sure, you could sell it, but it's your house. You want to keep it. In many states, property taxes are, just a percentage of your home's appraised value. So you're now paying double the taxes, and you still don't have any kids in that darn school. And the good news is the government's now starting to say, hey, what's it worth right now? I mean, maybe we should tax you on everything you own. It's gone up, So not only will the local community be taking state income tax or property tax, but the federal government's going to do it too. Isn't that great? The whole thing sounds a little immoral, but especially the fact that you don't ever really own your land. The minute you can't pay the tax, they foreclose and take it from you. That seems a little immoral. Like, I'm not really pursuing my happiness then, am I? Because I own nothing. Oh, but I am happy.
Glenn Beck Program.